All right, hello everyone. This is another beer and a theme park. I just opened one of these the other day and it went all over, so I'm kind of scared. um, we are going to talk about a theme park while drinking a beer. Novel concept, right? So today we are talking about Cedar Point for kids under the age of 5. I've had several people comment about what all there is to do for kids that are a little bit younger at Cedar Point, what they can do at Cedar Point, around the premises, things like that. We're also going to get into a few little logistical things. We're going to talk about naps. We're going to talk about the pre-K pass and things like that. So I hope you're ready. I hope you're excited. We have lots of tips and tricks coming for you, and let's go. Ooh, a hazy double IPA. Worth seeking. Actually, I really like this. This is kind of a deep tasting IPA. Anyway, let's get into this. So initially, the very first thing we're going to talk about is the pre-K pass for 2023. Now, the pre-K pass, I have done this. None of this is on video, but I've done all of this stuff. I've been coming to Cedar Point since roughly 2016, something like that. I've been coming since long before that. I just gotten divorced and I would come to Cedar Point by myself with my daughter. So all of this stuff I've done. You don't have it on video. You have all my other tips and tricks on video as of late anyway. But these are all things that I've done that I can talk about from my own experience with my daughter. So when I started coming, she was like 3 years old, and I would come every year anyway. I didn't really have other people to come with as much, so I would bring my daughter, and it was something really fun. Now Nathan and I would come every year, and it was always a fun time with him too, but we'd just come one time. My daughter and I, we would come frequently, and we had a pass to Cedar Point. I had a gold pass, and we'd walk around the park together. Now, I did have to come to Cedar Point to give her that pre-K pass, and I had to be there within the first, 2 weeks or something like that. They do have a website here. I'll just put that down, put the link down below. It does talk specifically about it. You have to have a gold, a platinum, prestige, or Prestige Plus pass in order to come to Cedar Point and get the Platinum Pass. But you do have to register by August 1st of 2023. You have to register online. So you have to register early on. It says here, guests may not register at the park. So don't bring them on August 1st, expecting to be able to bring your child in when you haven't already registered them. You need to register online for both you and your child. Make sure you have that pass first, because you have to have the pass in order to get this. And then after that, you need to register your kids by bringing them to the park for one of the public operating days to activate their pass. And again, that has to be done by August 1st. So I knew it was within the first couple months of opening, and that's what it is for this. That was kind of a problem for me initially, because it was hard to get my daughter. I think I just bought her a pass the very first year, and then after that, I got her the pre-K pass because I wasn't able to bring my daughter there in person to do that. But you do have to bring your child and have a valid birth certificate. Now, I'm pretty sure I had to talk to my ex-wife about getting a valid birth certificate for my daughter at the time. I'm pretty sure that she just got me a copy of it, and I just brought the copy of her birth certificate to Cedar Point. They're not going to be particularly sticklers about having the birth certificate that it has to be, but it does need to be a copy so that they can see your child and all that kind of stuff. As long as you have essentially what they're going to need, they'll be fine with getting you in for it. They're basically checking to make sure that your child is 5 years old at the time of purchase. Your child doesn't have to be 5 years old for the entire season. If they're 5 years old at the beginning of the season, then they can still have it for that entire year. So throughout the rest of their sixth year, they can still attend Cedar Point on a free pre-K pass. Now, this only really does work well if you come frequently, at least frequently enough that you're going to plan to come at the beginning of the season and you're going to plan to come toward the end of the season with your child. Otherwise, I mean, there's not really much of a purpose to get it, but it is something that's a good option for people to use, and something that I don't know everybody knows about. So if you live somewhat close by and you can get kind of an extra weekend to bring your child early on in the season, and then you can bring them again for Halloween weekends later, or for maybe just main summertime and they want to spend some time on the beach and ride a few coasters or rides in this case, we'll get to that later, then they can do that. That's basically what you have for the pre-K pass. Also, regarding any of this stuff, if you have more questions, same thing applies as every video. Please let me know down in the comments what questions you have. I'd love to answer them for you, and I'll answer them on any kind of topic, whether it's an extremely niche topic, more like this one is, or it is a broader topic. Just let me know what you guys need to know, and I'll be more than happy to answer it for you. Now, inside Cedar Point, there are 4 different kids areas. Those 4 areas are Planet Snoopy, you have the Kitty Kingdom, you have Camp Snoopy, and you have the Gemini Midway area, which really I would say is not so much of a kids area as it is a family area. There are lots of family rides down the Gemini Midway, including the roller coasters also. And talking about roller coasters are for anyone 48 inches and up. Now, we are talking about kids that are under 5 years old, but there are some taller 5-year-olds, so I'm still going to include it. If your child is over 48 inches, regardless of how old they are, they can ride this list of roller coasters. They can ride the Mine Ride, Gemini, Millennium Force, which is kind of an outlier here, along with also Magnum. Like, if you're talking about rides, those are big ones. Those are big ones even for adults, but your kid can ride them at 48 inches and above. Also, they have Iron Dragon, Blue Streak, and Corkscrew. Now, when your child comes to Cedar Point, I recognize if they're, 5 years old, they don't really understand why maybe they can't get on a ride. Or even at 6 years old, they may not be able to understand why they can't ride the ride. So sometimes it's best, I think, to just go straight to the front so that you can set the expectations for your family. At the very front of the park, they have these little height sliders that will go over your child's head, and that'll basically measure how tall they are. And then they'll give them a paper bracelet that will let the ride operators know this person was the right size. This person is tall enough. So when your child goes through the line, they already know because they have a bracelet on that says, yes, I am 48 inches, or I'm 36 inches, or whatever I am. And then they'll be able to get onto the rides that apply to them. Because there are some rides that will apply to like 42 inches, or maybe at 42 inches, you can ride this ride by yourself. You can ride this ride with your parent, different things like that. There are some different rides that have lots of rules all throughout them. So that is a nice thing for your kid. That way then they know what they can ride when they can ride it. And we'll go through a few examples of some of those later on. I'm not going to read you every list of rides, but I will leave you the links down below, just like I did with the pre-K passes. I'll also give you the link to every ride that you can ride as a 48-incher or a 36-incher or whatever, however big your child is. That way then they can get an idea of what they can ride, and you can have an idea already. But your child's gonna feel disappointed if they're expecting, I'm 48 inches, and they find out they're really 47 inches and they can't ride those rides today, but maybe they can in a month. That doesn't really help your kid. But if they come in and they already have a band that says what they have, what they can do, sure, they may be disappointed, but at least then precedent has been set for the entire day. Now, the one ride that's really weird about roller coasters to me is corkscrew. It's amazing to me that kids can ride corkscrew. And honestly, it scares the crap out of me. I would not want my daughter on it. It feels like she could easily just like jump out on one of the corkscrews. Like, it just doesn't make sense to me. When I know it really holds you in mostly by your legs. But when your shoulders are so narrow that you could kind of make your way through, I don't know. It scares me. I can't do it. Obviously, use your own judgment based on who your kids are and what you think they can handle. Also, if you're looking for tips and tricks on what order to take your children on coasters, if you're trying to turn them into coaster lovers, please check out my video, Make Someone Love Roller Coasters with This Order at Cedar Point. Go check that one out. We talked about it in that video at length, and actually had some kids test it out in another video. So go check that one out if you guys would like to. There's more than just coasters at Cedar Point, but there are some coasters that you can do with your family, even if they are under 48 inches. And that's what we're going to talk about right now. One of the very first things that my daughter did was Scrambler. She loved the Scrambler when she first came in, and that was something that we were able to ride quite frequently because she was tall enough to ride it. I think that one was around 42 inches. But there are basically a couple of different categories, and I'm just going to talk you through those right now. So we have family rides, we have spinny rides, we have transportation rides, and we have water park stuff. So water park stuff, obviously, you've got the lazy river, you've got any of the different pools that you can have. There's also some slides where it's like an entire larger, but also very shallow pool that your kids can go in right away. Like, I don't even think there's any age limit at all. So they can do that. There are different size slides too. So if you have a more daring 3-year-old, then they can ride the slides that are more daring. Or if you have a less daring 5-year-old, then they can ride the smaller rides. There's no real limit on what the kids can or cannot do while they're there. And adults can go down those slides too, but if you're a single adult, you'll probably look real silly going on those, / creepy, going down those without a child with you. Now, for family rides, Gemini Midway does have a lot of family stuff in it. And down there you have things like Monster, you have things like the Lake Erie Eagles. You also have the Matterhorn and stuff like that. Many of those rides are going to be good for you to ride with your family. However, most of them will have height restrictions of some sort. For instance, Lake Erie Eagles, you can ride at 36 inches. But to ride by yourself, you have to be 44 inches. Now, that's not the full height of 48 inches, but it does allow your child to, first of all, do a few things with you if they want to, but also to ride earlier by themselves. So if they're wanting just a little bit of that independence, then they can do that. They can be a little bit independent and ride some rides by themselves, even though they may not be coasters. However, there are also some coasters in one of the kids' areas. When you are back in Camp Snoopy, the kids can have 2 different coasters that they can ride by themselves. For instance, Wilderness Run is a very, very tame roller coaster for kids specifically. It has a 36-inch height requirement, so kids can ride it of pretty much any size or height, as long as they can pretty much walk and, you know, run around the park by themselves a little bit. You know, like, as long as they're pretty independent, they can probably ride this ride. So starting, you know, probably around 4-ish, my daughter was able to ride this ride by herself. Now, she often still wanted me to ride it with her, and I will tell you, it's a real tight snug, or a real tight fit. So you definitely want to lose as much weight as you can before you ride that ride. But having a tiny little child with you also helps. The bigger she got, the harder it was for me to fit into it, and I probably got a little bit bigger too, so that's probably part of it. The max height, though, for that is 54 inches. So we're only talking kids that can ride that ride. Once you get tall enough to ride other rides, you no longer, you're kind of sized out of it, unless you have a smaller brother or sister or a smaller friend that you've come with, and then you can also ride it as their companion. I don't know which one's right. I'm a musician, so accompaniment sounded right, but I don't think that's the one I meant to go with. On the other hand, Woodstock Express is for, once again, minimum height 36 inches, but you have to be accompanied for that 36 inch. To ride it alone, you have to be 48 inches, and anyone can ride it, including adults. So there is no height of, like maximum height of how big you can be to ride it. Definitely a fun ride, and I would definitely encourage you to give your child, the option of being able to ride that one. That's a great starter coaster for your kids, or great, second starter, but especially for older kids. It's a great ride that's not too intense, but gives you just a few thrills while you're on it. Now, on top of that, of course, there are tons of spinning attractions, and even at smaller than 36 inches, you can ride most of these attractions. Now, many of them exist in Kiddie Kingdom, especially for the very smallest of kids. For instance, in Kiddie Kingdom, you have the 4x4s, and they have no height restriction at all. I'm sure they have to cut it off at some point. Probably once your child can support themselves, then that's where they can ride it. But the max height is 54 inches. So no height requirement. It's basically these little trucks that go around in a circle. As a parent, you can ride them. You ride in the back of it, essentially, and you can watch your kid and enjoy them having fun while they're on it. It's definitely a fun thing for kids in particular. They can pretend to drive it. However, most of those rides that are for the smallest of kids exist in Kiddie Kingdom, which is kind of the essential role of Kiddie Kingdom, to be the place where your smallest kids can come and they can play and they can have fun for the day. But there are some other rides, like Balloon Race, that are a bit more daring for kids, and you do have to be 36 inches for that, or under 36 inches accompanied. With many of these rides, if you want a small child, a very small child, to be able to do it, you have to accompany them, and then they'll be able to ride it as long as they're with you. Now, you also have transportation rides at Cedar Point that any kid can do. Again, even an infant can do them because they're going to be sitting in your lap. So the train, the sky ride, those kinds of transportation services around the park, those are the rides that you can do even with your child. So if you have a sleeping baby, that is an option for you. However, I would be very careful about taking the train with a sleeping child because the train ride back has lots of gunshots that will scare your child. And I have sufficiently traumatized mine. She does not like that. Coming back, she never likes it. Every time we get on the train, regardless, she's like, are they going to be shooting the guns this way? Because she doesn't like that at all. On the way back to Frontier Town, there's no guns. But on the way up to the front, there are lots of guns. You hear it most of the way back. So that's kind of a problem with your kids, or it can be a problem. It was a problem with mine. Now, obviously, Cedar Point has more than just rides that you can do with your kids. And one huge thing that you really need to do with your child, and it is the horse that I will beat for the rest of my life, is that even a PC phrase anymore? Beating the dead horse. I will constantly harp on this. You have to go to the beach. Spend time with your child at the beach. It's one of my favorite things to do with my daughter. She loves water. She loves to swim. And like if I bring her in a dress, she will get in the water all the way down as much as she possibly can. In a dress, just because she loves the beach. She loves water. She's a little fishy, and it's one of her favorite things to do. And I think most kids are that way. So if you bring them to the beach, they will enjoy making a sandcastle with you. They will enjoy doing lots of things. Now, I realize that may not be the way that you want to spend your time because you spent your money to go to Cedar Point. And obviously there are other beaches you can go to, but I do think it's worthwhile, especially if you're wanting to kind of raise a thrill seeker someday, you know, make it an enjoyable experience for your child. That doesn't mean you can't enjoy it also and that you can't enjoy doing other things, but having that time out on the beach, I think is an awesome thing to do. You also could save a little bit of money that way too. If you're coming, you know, with a couple different kids, it's going to get expensive to spend money on food, and going out to the beach, you could actually bring like a little cooler out onto the beach if you wanted to, bring all of your beach equipment along with it, and that could be the place where you kind of just hang out. You have your lunch, you play on the beach for a while, and you've saved a little bit of money instead of having to spend money on theme park food that's famously always overpriced. Another horse that I will always beat, I will always talk about this, is go see shows. Now, obviously this last year, if you've seen some of my videos, I talked about that the shows this last year kind of had a more sexy tinge to them. But you still have shows like Lusty Lils. You still have the Snoopy shows. You still have even some of the sexier shows, apart from Wild Frontier Nights, which obviously wasn't even for kids at all. But even some of the sexier shows I saw kids at. Some parents would probably feel more uncomfortable with that, and some would probably be perfectly fine with it. So it's obviously up to your discretion, but they also had some really fun shows of, like, they had a jelly bean show this last year where basically kids just came up and they tasted those jelly beans that they either could be like pear or they could be boogers, and they tasted them and then they'd spit them out and get a better jelly bean and go back out into the crowd. It was a fun little thing. They also have the Witch Sisters. All of these are worthwhile to go check out. Also, don't forget about the arcade. The arcade is another option for you, especially if you're more local. Some great rides, some fun things to do with your kids, and another fun event for you and your family to do together. Now, when I was bringing my 3-year-old or my 4-year-old, she still was taking naps at that point. And I was one of the lucky dads that my daughter would take a pretty consistent nap at almost all the time. Some of that I honestly think I could really attribute to my ex-wife, who I think did a very good job with trying to get her to take good naps. So it was very important when we were at Cedar Point to find a napping place. I did bring strollers in. You also can rent strollers at the front. Also, there are lockers at the front and throughout the park where if you have extra things, extra bags or nappies or who knows what that your child may need, diapers even, those things can be stored in the lockers. Lockers are usually about $15, but it depends on which size you're going to get. If your child is needing a nap, though, there are several different places where they can go. One of them where you could go just for some quiet time would be some of the different designated smoking areas, including but not limited to the like zoo area. They have the Ohio Farm essentially, and that's basically all just a petting zoo. But there's also a nice shaded area right there where you can sit in some rocking chairs and you can just kind of relax. Your child can zone out and start to fall asleep. That's a good place for a nap. You also could go to some of the other smoking areas. They're not smoking anymore. The entire park is smoke free, so you don't have to worry about smoking there. But they're just large sections that are kind of a little bit separated from the rest of the walking paths, and they're really nice areas for you and your kid just to kind of sit and relax a little bit. There's one over by Corkscrew, and then there is another one basically by the railroad at the very back of the park. So those are all great options of places to relax. But by far my favorite place to relax when I took my daughter was to go out to Hotel Breakers. We would just hang out on Hotel Breakers. She would already start to fall asleep as we started entering the beach. And then as we walked into Hotel Breakers, she would already be asleep. and I would just walk into Hotel Breakers and just hang out there. If I had someone else with me, I might get a drink for us and just kind of hang out while my daughter took her nap. It was a great place where we could just kind of hang out. We could relax a little bit. We could watch a video on my phone. It gave me some time to relax and to settle down while my daughter took her nap for the day. Or possibly a couple different naps. It kind of depended on how old she was and where she was in her like napping schedule. But those are all really good places where you can go and just help your child to not be completely out of sorts while you're at the theme park. They're already little. They can't ride everything. Now, if you're there with a lot of other people, I understand you may not want to take them away from everyone else, or you may not want to leave everyone else. But sometimes for your own sanity, it's best to do that anyway. Let everyone else go do something else, and you leave for a few minutes just to, clear your head and allow your child to relax. That way they're not completely out of sorts and you're not completely bent out of shape later on in the day. I already mentioned food, and there are some different options as far as food goes for you and your child. Obviously, I've talked about every different type of food that there is in the park. There are some staples that I think probably are more popular amongst families and amongst especially kids. And some of those would be like mac and cheese, burgers, fries, chicken nuggets, things like that. And you can definitely find a lot of those options in really probably most of the restaurants at Cedar Point. You also can find some great Italian at Hugo's. So if your kid likes pizza or they like spaghetti, that's a great option. And a lot of those meals, especially at Hugo's, can be a bit more shareable. Like you can eat the side salad while your kid has the spaghetti. That's usually a pretty good way to do it, to be able to save a little bit of money on what you're eating. Of course, if you get a pass, then you can have 2 meals of the day and your child can eat half of each meal. And then you don't have to spend a ton of money. Or, like I said earlier, you can tailgate, pack some peanut butter and jelly sandwiches or something, some potato chips or something like that, and eat it in your trunk, essentially. Or you can go to out to the beach and have a few snacks or have some food there and a cooler that you can eat while your kid is playing, and then they can come back because they're going to get extremely hungry playing in the water. At least I always did as a kid. Now, the last thing that I want to talk about, and just to touch on a little bit, I don't know that much about this, but they do have the Kid Track program. Now, I don't know if Kid Track means they can actually see where your kid is at all times, or if it's just a bracelet. When my daughter was coming, they had just a bracelet that they would put on your kid. That bracelet had a number, essentially, and then would tell, they could show it to any associate, and then they would be able to give you a call because your number was on it also. So then someone could call your cell phone, and if you couldn't find your child, they would be able to tell you where your kid was by giving you a call after your kid had run away from you or you lost them or whatever. That is something that I think would be worthwhile to look into. Of course, I always think it's important to set up parameters with your kids and to let them know who they need to go talk to. So I always tell my daughter that you need to look for someone with the Cedar Point shirt on and with a name tag. If she can find someone with that shirt and with that name tag, they're a safe person to ask. Because you don't want your kid talking to just anyone if by any chance they get separated. Of course, I'm always holding my child. I'm always watching her, all that kind of stuff. But it's happened, and stranger things have happened to other people. No judgment here if that has ever happened to you. It is something to make sure to have set up with your kid. That way then you know that they're safe, or at least that they have some sort of thing that they know what to do if they get lost. Of course, I always tell them also to stay in the same general area, not walk everywhere, because I will go find her. I don't need her looking for me. As soon as I would realize she's gone, I would be freaking out and running everywhere to find her. So anyway, thank you guys so much for watching today. That's all for this topic. Please let me know if there's anything else that you would like to hear that's more specific, either about this topic or about anything else regarding Cedar Point. I'd love to hear from you guys down in the comments. Please leave a like and subscribe, and we'll see you in the next video. Let's go!